This conversation is brought to you by DHL Freight.
Hello, everyone. My name is Louis Yiakoumi, and I'm very happy and privileged to have another conversation, this time with a friend who I've known for quite a few years. Although we look so young, we've known each other for quite a few years. It's Harry Chase, the Senior Director of Central Materials at GE Appliances. Hello, Harry.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, so Harry, can you tell it, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because I knew you before GE Appliances in the automotive industry.
Yeah, so I met Louis. I met you at Hyundai when I was there.
Yeah.
Helped launch the plant there, set up the logistics and material flow inside the factory. Had a history in automotive before there. Really started out in automotive at Denso Corporation, where I did do some supplier plant launches, and then kind of morphed into OEM plants. So always worked with Ford for a while, helped set up the commissary plant down in Brazil. So it was very interesting, and always enjoyed the automotive side of the world. And ended up going to appliances after that. Worked for Whirlpool for a few years, and then ended up here at GE Appliances.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And when you first arrived at GE Appliances, we kind of had a conversation, and you said you were there building an automation roadmap. So what does that mean, and how did you start doing that?
Yeah, so I joined 8 years ago, and GE Appliances had a kind of pockets, but it was really just fixed robotics. So, where you're doing the material movement inside, or you're doing welding inside of cells with robotic fixtures. We really didn't have a roadmap for mobile automation. So I was hired in to build that out. So it was exciting. I think when you look back through history, materials and logistics, production control, we've always been on the tail end of technology. We've always had MRP systems, of course, but we've never really got nice toys to play with on the automation side. So I started building that roadmap out. How do we build things from the supply base into the assembly line? And really creating that visibility, and how do we get rid of the old dangerous dirty jobs that people do day to day, especially in material movement.
Hmm. And automation technology has changed so fast and so quickly in recent years with more robotics and AI, of course. How has that changed your thinking on what you thought you were going to be doing compared with when you first started? 8 years is a long time in technology.
It is a very long time. It's really changed quite a bit. Every year something new comes out. I When we started 8 years ago, we were using some, I won't say old technology, but we were using vision guided vehicles, and then really built out to where we started testing out 3D lidar based navigation. It's and even with the 3D based navigation, it changes every year or every 2 years, and then really built out from there. So when we started out, it was kind of the old, I hate to say old school because the technology is still relatively young. It's only, even vision guided vehicles are only, 15 years old. It's not like
Yeah.
they're 40 years old or older like me, but, so it's,
Mm.
we really started looking at that as the technology kind of grows and changes, especially with AI coming into play. We've really changed what we feel we can do with that technology, and changed the kind of the process map. So we updated quite frequently. We're always doing long-term planning. So we're always looking every 6 months, is there something new that came along that we can add, or delete some older technology, to kind of keep us flowing along, and keeping at kind of the cutting edge of technology.
Hmm. And how far are you now using AI and autonomous vehicles or mobile robotics in the real operations? And what has genuinely worked? What has worked well for you?
Yeah, with the 3D lidar mapping, truly becoming autonomous, where the robots can reroute themselves. They're
Mm.
becoming smarter every year. The technology is changing. We started out, 8 years ago with robotic operating system, which kind of drove everything. Now there's ROS2, and everybody's kind of built off that ROS2 platform. So we've really gone out, and the autonomy helps us navigate so we can change quickly. The robots are smarter and smarter. If they come up, on an obstacle, they can actually repath themselves. So they'll start learning ways to get around. When we first started, especially with the 3D LiDAR based, really heavily about 7 years ago, we always kind of laughed. The robots, we call it robot dance. So the robots would, like robot to like robot would stare at each other and they think the same. So they would try to move the same. So they would sit there and dance for about 30 seconds back and forth. And then one would finally give up and they re-navigate themselves. That's always changed with AI. They're becoming smarter. They know that it's a like to like. They'll back up. They'll get out of the way. They'll give priority to the other robots. So it's been quite interesting to see how that's changed. With AI, we're really it's really developing more and more every year. We've been playing with AI, and we've had some tools in place for about 5 years now. But on the automation side, it's really how do we unload, trucks or load trucks, with a robotic forklift, and that's where AI is really starting to help us out and build out there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're quite advanced, been working on it for a few years. But AI is fantastic and hopefully will help us a lot. And people often focus on the technology, but what about the human side? I hope that's still an important part of making all this automation successful.
Yeah, so G Appliances, we've invested over $4 billion over the last 7, 8 years, and including in automation, whether fixed robotics or mobile robotics. And with the human side of it, it's really upskilling our workers. So a lot of it is, we have to now, we call them robot wranglers. So they're going out there and they have to keep the robots up every day. If the robots can, mislocalize every once in a while, somebody's got to go wrangle them or rescue them, reset them on the path. So with the human side, it's really getting rid of those, dirty, dull, dangerous jobs. Is an example. The first ones we put in with the vision guided vehicles, 60% of the work was just driving from a warehouse to the line side to deliver parts. And now we can do that, autonomously. So we can load them up in the warehouse. We can take away that kind of boring work of just driving back and forth all day. That allows us to have the operators picking and placing, and then they can examine the totes to, how they're delivered to the line. Are they delivered correctly? Are we picking the right parts? Are we delivering the right parts? So it's really driving that focus on value add versus, again, that kind of boring driving back and forth.
Yeah, okay. And where have you seen the biggest operational or business impact from automation?
I believe, kind of when we look at, if I take a step back, and we look at the whole supply chain, so even what, besides autonomous equipment inside the factories, we've really gone out and started using technology for tracking, from the supply base in. So, 8 years ago, if you asked me where a sea container was or where a truck was, we didn't know. There was limited technology. There's always been different companies out there that provided the tracking software, but now you can see everything. So I can go in and type in our systems and say, show me where part ABC is. It'll tell me exactly which ship it's on, what sea container it's in. I can see when the sea containers due. I can look at a map. I can track the sea container through. I can see when it goes on rail. I can, now I can see when it goes on a truck. So we GPS track, not only the tractors, but also the trailers. And then when it hits the plant, we're using different AI tools now, to do the receiving. So we just launched with a company, Cargo. And so when you unload the truck, it actually scans all the barcodes. But in addition, it does a freight check. It's going out there and making sure there was no damage as it comes in. So it's capturing that all in real time. If it's freight damage, it'll flash a red light to us. But then it can go in easily and say, here's my advanced shipping notice. This is what they're supposed to ship. I'm doing that comparison now without having somebody climbing it all off a forklift and scan each, individual box coming through the dock door. And then once we get in again, it's how do we use this different technology to, load it onto a mobile robot, send it to the assembly line, bring the empty packaging back from the assembly line, over to a compactor or over to the returnable packaging center. So it's been a great change from, kind of the beginning to the end and bringing that technology into play. Um, I think it's interesting, even simple things AI is playing, along
Yeah.
is we just freight audit has always been a pain for everybody in the world that's lived in transportation or logistics. And so usually what we did is we paid companies to help us audit. So we would audit 5% after we
Mm.
got the freight bill. And nowadays we're using AI that when it comes in, it'll actually reject it before it even hits our invoice system. So it'll kick it back to the carrier and say, "Hey, we negotiated, say $500 for this lane. You try to bill me, $600." It'll kick it out and tell them you're overbilling me by X amount, and it kind of guides them through with an AI interface that helps, you know, tie that all together. So some of the AI tools that we didn't even think about, even 5 years ago, we kind of hoped for these things are
Yeah.
really coming to fruition, and so it's been fantastic.
Hmm. And what advice would you give to logistics service providers or logistics companies that are trying to work with you at GE?
Yeah, so we work with several 3PLs
Mm.
to push, and some of them have some technology that they're starting to deploy. Unfortunately, I won't say unfortunately, I think a lot of the focus has been on the e-commerce side with Amazon coming in, and it's been a good and bad thing. Amazon's really
Mm.
driven a lot of the technology,
Yeah.
FedExes of the world.
Mm.
But usually for the manufacturing side, um, we can tie into that technology, but a lot of it is I push that technology back down to the 3PL. So they'll have some capability, maybe at one of their bigger warehouses, but if they're running 20 warehouses, they may have one or two showcases. But a lot of times we don't see that flow down very quickly. So we push a lot of technology. So in our warehouses right now, we actually in some cases it's more advanced than our factories where we do for instance at our warehouses we have a night scope which does our security system, so we have a robot roaming around doing security. Once it hits inside the factory or inside the warehouse, we have avid bots that does robotic cleaning, so it goes and cleans and scrubs the floors every night.
Mm.
Probably one of the big changes that we have been very successful with is because the warehouses are, anywhere from 280,000 square feet, up to 500,000 square feet. Um, for instance, cycle counting used to take a long time. It would
Yeah.
take us three people 45 days to do cycle count, a warehouse. We just introduced 2 years ago a British company, Dexery. We were, I believe, the second to use them in the US, probably more to scale in the US.
Mm.
But basically, it's a cycle counting robot and it'll go and we can cycle count the whole warehouse in 8 hours now. So
Yeah.
the technology has just driven massive efficiency gains. Whereas now we actually got up to 100% inventory accuracy at one of our warehouses just because we're using new tools like this.
Yeah.
But the Dexry also incorporates AI in there. We're about to deploy some third wave forklifts at one of the warehouses to test it out there. The nice thing that I get to run the warehouse side of it, but also the manufacturing side, is that I can test out some different technology
Mm.
inside the warehouses first and then bring it into the factories.
Yeah.
And then we do some other things such as slip robotics, where it's a robot that will drive onto the trailer. We use those for shuttle runs. So it's been very interesting. But again, most of the time we're pushing the tech down to the 3PLs.
Mm.
Part of it, I believe, is just I'll blame the customer because we're kind of mean and sometimes scared for somebody else to take our product. And so
Mm.
I've been trying to be very supportive of when they want to try new technology to go out there and either I push it on them or
Yeah.
I'm there to help them and support them and say, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go and we'll help test it out and pay for it
Yeah.
to make sure it works correctly.
Hmm. And what about young people, a little bit younger than us, who want to join the industry, want to join the supply chain logistics what advice would you give them? What skills do they now need? Are they supposed to be IT experts rather than supply chain experts?
I believe you still have to have a basic knowledge of, how the trucks work and different things there, or how the whole flow works, and once it hits the
Mm.
factory, even simple things like packaging, right? That always seems to be a bottleneck and inside of a lot of operations. So if you can understand all the different key aspects of the flow of material, it helps out a lot. And then
Mm.
using these new AI tools, whether um, again, we use an add-on to our MRP system, Lean DNA, that can
Mm.
do some more analysis and AI tools. And all, but it's the AI is just giving you recommendations back, and you still have to have that basic knowledge.
Yeah.
I would say, one of the key things is, again, learn that basic material flow logic, learn MRP
Mm.
logic, because systems can recommend, but it's not necessarily always correct.
Yeah.
Then I would say start building out that AI knowledge. We're really pushing our teams more and more to learn how to do the scripting, how to write correctly, because you can ask AI a question and you can ask it
Yeah.
3 different ways. It'll give you 3 different answers.
Yeah.
So we're really asking people to look at that. So I think that's the main thing. And when you get into, like, on the engineering side, it's really understanding what LiDAR is, how do these systems work. They all have some limitations. They can do some certain things. It's hard to run things outside also still on a standard unless you go into bigger systems.
Yeah.
And so it's really learning the basics of how that all works together.
Hmm. But it's still a great industry to be in. Supply chain and logistics is still going to be a great industry.
It's the best. To be honest, I talked to our fixed robotics guy, and he's jealous because everybody's focused on logistics now. Fixed robots have been around, for 60 years,
Yeah.
and really, again, with the Ubers of the world,
Mm.
tracking and being able to see where your car is and picking you up, or the Amazons of the world delivering packages in the morning. There's really been a big investment and focus on how do you do logistics faster and smarter. And
Yeah.
it's really inside of manufacturing. It's been kind of the last one. It seems like we never had the tech before, and so while the operations guys and the production guys are running out there putting cool robots in, we were still driving forklifts around and tuggers around. But nowadays, with the advent of humanoids coming on, there's some more opportunities for that flexibility and moving things from point A to B.
Yeah.
Besides those systems out there that are being built off of AI to help us, gone are the good old days. I won't say good old days because they weren't good old days, but when we had to pick up the phone and call somebody, and then they would have to try to call a truck driver and hope they had a cell phone, and we couldn't see where anything is, and you're panicking because the line's about, at Hyundai, it was panic. If you take an automotive plant down for, a minute, you're in big trouble. So it's always nice now that I can just sit there and go to terminal and I can see the truck driving down the road. We use Samsara on a lot of our trucks, so I can go actually see the truck driving, and where they are and how they're driving. A little bit spooky, I think, for the drivers that somebody's what they're doing. But as far as a logistic professional, I love it because I know when that's going to hit my dock door now versus kind of
Yeah.
panicking. So the advent's been, really good. The changes over the years has been really exciting.
Well, don't tell my wife about that tracking technology. I don't want her to hear about it.
That's
But
true. So put it on your phone and she'll know exactly where you are
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. We said at the beginning that you came from automotive. What we've considered, or what I've always considered, I'm a little bit biased. That's the only sector that I've really, ever covered. But what lessons do you think you transferred from Hyundai to GE appliances, via Whirlpool? What do you think, now that you've been in the other sectors, what should automotive learn from these other sectors?
Yeah, I think for us, it's automotive has been a lot stronger in standardization. So with AIAG, they've always worked together,
Yeah.
better. You have Automotive Logistics magazine and
Mm.
conferences, and so you're
Yeah.
getting some good knowledge sharing. On the appliance side, we don't really have that. It's we don't really talk to our competitors. Nobody puts together
Mm.
appliance logistics conference. So when we
Yeah.
do go to different conferences, it's hard to get that synergy built up.
Mm.
So automotive has that. They've had the Toyota production system. Lean manufacturing's been there historically. So we've borrowed, basically, the appliance manufacturing systems based on, lean principles. We work with LEI and different companies.
Yeah.
So that's really been a big help. I think where appliance industry, for me anyway, is a lot of times automotive guys are so big and so large and so,
Yeah.
they have, I don't want to really say siloed, but there's so many different groups and organizations. The advantages in the appliance industry is we're pretty lean as far as having that built out.
Yeah.
So again, I control inbound transportation, which controls the warehouses. I control kind of that whole flow. Whereas maybe in an automotive industry, we're a lot more agile, and I think we can therefore work with new technologies and be on that cutting edge, and really drive some changes and partner with some of these startups. So a lot of the startups like working with us because we are agile. G Appliances has a over 100-year history from Thomas Edison's roots of innovation. I get to have a budget. I think that I can try out new technology. I can work with these startups. We learn a lot from the startups, and so that's really been the big difference, is that with our kind of our smaller organization, we've been able to be more nimble than I saw at Hyundai. Hyundai, we were a big company, and you want to do cross plant sharing. Even though we have 9 factories here in the U.S., we do the material directors. We hold meetings every 2 weeks to do cross plant knowledge sharing. I think on the automation side, even with automotive, they're a little bit more advanced in Europe. They have VDA 50/50. In America, we've been a little bit lagging on that. So I keep hoping automotive, because they're the kind of the big powerful guys in the world, that they'll push some standard like VDA 50/50. So we do have some interoperability opportunities with automation. And so that would be nice to see that or even if we can get together with the automotive guys. Through the years, we still do a lot of benchmarking. Ford was in here last year, a lot of their MPL leaders. So we did benchmark with them. We're invited to go benchmark them. I was down at Mercedes a couple months ago, benchmarking with them, talking about the different automation path. We're ahead in some aspects of it, and then of course automotive kind of still leads in different things. So
yeah. Yeah, excellent. Is there one thing that you wish automotive would learn from other sectors, or even from your kind of sector?
yeah, I think again, it's learning how to be more. A lot of times they're not as risk. They're more risk adverse, I would say, to try something, because car plants are multi-billion-dollar operations in themselves. You're a little bit, again, you're a little bit more nervous to go try those startup opportunities. So again, we're willing to take the thoughtful risk. We're working on cutting edge automation and AI adoption. Sometimes automotive guys, because they're big, they want to build that technology inside, and because of that, they're a little bit more cautious. Whereas we're very collaborative to outside innovation, and I think that would be the thing to learn, is how to be more collaborative. I work with several startups. I'm on their advisory boards, and so a lot of times automotive guys aren't playing. They're buying 1 or 2 of these tools, but they're not really in there hot and heavy, helping guide the startups and pushing where they need to go. Just an odd example, I think, is AIG is kind of forced, in manufacturing, it's the 45 by 48 inch footprint for returnable packaging or to load out trailers and cube out. I've gone back and taken that knowledge and pushed and said, so we worked with different robotic companies, but all the mobile robots, AMRs, are all weird sizes. Maybe they're European sizes. That's probably why they're weird. So we never had a 45 by 48. And so I really pushed. I worked with a Turkish company, Milvis, and now they're building a 45 by 48 robot. And it's things like that. If the automotive guys got more involved at the front end, maybe it wouldn't have been such a longer journey to push for a 45 by 48 robot, versus we're getting these weird sizes like 57 by 40-inch robots.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to drive that to standardized. And I'm using that background with automotive to kind of keep it along the AIG standard.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll become more widely adopted. So.
Yeah. No, excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Harry. I've always enjoyed talking to you and meeting you over the years, and it's great to talk to you again. Thank you very much for your insights. I'm sure your friends, probably many of them are probably still your friends in the automotive industry, will be pleased to hear from you, but also be understand and hopefully learn from your insights as well and what we can do differently. And thank you for your advice. I think maybe the next AL will be appliances logistics instead of automotive logistics.
That would be fantastic. Or maybe we do an AAL where we do
Yeah, that's
automotive and
right.
appliance
Automotive and
logistics.
appliances.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that would be really interesting to do. So
yeah.
we get some good sharing between each other.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, really good to see you and to talk to you, Harry. And as always, we'll stay in contact. So thank you very much for your time today. Really interesting and insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.